There is a huge park near my house. On weekends and public holidays, it gets really busy. However, at night, the atmosphere of the park is entirely different. Back when I had just moved into the area, I was unpacking. I had so much to do, and there wasn't an end in sight, so I decided to go to the park for a change of pace. The park had swings and slides, plenty of stuff. Next to a public toilet, there was a phone booth, illuminated in the darkness. For some reason, it creeped me out a bit. Later, when I had finally finished unpacking, it was about 1 a.m. I decided to go to a convenience store. The whole time I was walking, I felt as if somebody was watching me. I didn't want to look over my shoulder at any point. There was the phone booth. Ordinarily, I would walk past it without paying it much attention, but for some reason, I stopped and stared at it. After a couple of minutes, I snapped out of it and ran to the convenience store. I bought a few things, sweets, a bento box, and I was on my way home. Halfway through the park, I realized I was desperate to go to the toilet. It was unavoidable. I had to use the toilet in the park. At that time of night, I was the only one in the park. It was very frightening. As I was washing my hands, I heard a phone ringing. I checked, but it wasn't my mobile phone. It was coming from somewhere very close by there. The payphone was ringing. What perfect timing, I thought. Maybe it's for me? Two thoughts entered my mind. The first, curiosity. What would happen if I answered? The second, fear. Do not answer the phone. In the end, fear won. I ran back home, while the phone rang behind me. Back home, I sat on my sofa and tried to organize my thoughts. I was still thinking about the phone booth. From my window, I could see the park and the phone booth. I wasn't sure if it was still ringing. I watched for a few moments. A man appeared from the nearby toilets. The light of the public toilets illuminated him. In his right hand, he was holding a mobile phone, and in his left, something sharp, like a tool or a knife. It took only 2 minutes for me to run back home. I was just there in the park. I thought there was nobody else in the toilet with me. My suspicion is that that man was waiting in one of the toilet stalls. He dialed the payphone number, and he would creep up to whoever answered it from behind and murder them. What if my curiosity was greater than my fear? Whenever I think about what could have happened, I shudder. This happened around 20 years ago, a time where there were phone booths all around the city. I was at university at the time. I went out drinking with my fellow students. It was a Friday. It was approaching 1 a.m. We were eating ramen at a food store. I missed the last train home, but I could have easily gotten a taxi. But since I didn't have to get up early the next day, I thought I'd walk home to sober up. I could already tell that I would have a monster of a hangover. I didn't have a mobile phone back then, so I went in search of a phone booth to call my mum to let her know I'd be walking home. I found one by the bus station. Something strange. The faint scent of perfume lingered inside the booth. The phone was placed on top of the unit. I put the phone to my ear. The call had already ended. I could just hear that cold dial tone. indicating that the other party had hung up. I guessed that the last person forgot to put it back on the hook. Maybe they were drunk too. So I put it back. Coins jangled into the change slot. 6 10-yen coins. Lucky me. I used 2 to call my mum and pocketed the other 4. Then I was on my way again. But I kept thinking about the phone booth. So when I reached another one up ahead, I just had to peek inside. Again, the phone was placed on top of the unit, and the faint scent of the same perfume lingered in the booth. I put the phone to my ear. I could just hear that cold dial tone again, so I put it back on the hook. Coins jangled into the change slot. 5 10-yen coins this time. It was the same for the next phone booth I came across, and the next, and the next. It was always the same. The phone on top of the unit, the dial tone, and the coins falling into the change slot. I now had 19 10-yen coins. I rounded a corner and saw another phone booth. I caught a glimpse of someone who looked as if they had just left it. I went in and coughed. The smell of perfume was much stronger. It was sickly. I put the phone back on the hook and got 5 10-yen coins from the change slot once again. Total was now 24 10-yen coins. By the time I came to the next phone booth, I could clearly see someone in there. A young lady wearing a red one-piece dress, I think. She appeared to be smiling and talking on the phone. I remained out of sight. I waited for her to leave, and then I went inside. I put the phone to my ear and heard a voice sobbing uncontrollably. Is that you? Please stop this, please. We can't sleep, we're going crazy here. You have to stop this. Can't we talk about it again? Talk properly this time? Please stop. Acting on instinct alone, I hung up quickly. The coins jangled down into the change slot as per usual. Who gave you permission to hang up? Don't get in my way. I spun around. The woman in red was back. She stared at me from the other side of the glass. She was beautiful. Her pale face seemed to float in the darkness. She widened her grin. She glared at me and said, Don't get in my way. As I looked into her eyes, it felt like reality was slowly slipping away. I have never experienced such a terrifying sense of horror. In that moment, I was almost certain that I wasn't looking at a human. I burst out of the phone booth and ran as fast as I could. It was about 2 kilometers from my home. I was about 2 kilometers from my home. I ran for my life, only stopping briefly to throw up the ramen I ate earlier. I must have made it home in about 6 minutes. When home was in sight, I threw all the coins I had collected. They scattered across the road. Even when I changed my clothes, and after I took a bath, the smell of that woman's perfume still hung around me. Actually, I still don't know if that was a woman or something else. Prowling the streets in the dead of night? How many phone booths has she visited? How many calls has she made? How long was she stood behind me, peering at me like a predator? For me, this was no laughing matter. Not a story I particularly like sharing with my friends. It was a truly terrifying experience. And as you might have guessed, I quit walking home alone after this incident. It was summer break at university. I decided to drive back home to Tohoku. Things were fine until the car broke down about 30 minutes away from my hometown. My car was old and I didn't know if it could be repaired. I managed to park my car on a back street, close to a mountain pass. It was late night, so luckily the road was empty. I didn't see any cars, so I chose to stop there. I pulled my smartphone out of my pocket, thinking I could get some help from friends or family in my hometown, but the battery was dead. My bad luck was piling up. With no other option, I decided to walk along the mountain pass in search of a payphone. The worst possible outcome would be that I'd walk for a few hours and I'd reach my hometown. After about 10 minutes of walking up the steep pass, I was thirsty. I was out of breath and my shirt clung to my body. It was wet with sweat. I cursed myself for my lack of exercise. After a while, I saw a faint glow by the side of the road. A phone booth. Why would there be a phone booth on a mountain road anyway? Does it get used at all? For just a moment, I was suspicious. But the joy of finding a means of communication on this desolate mountain pass was greater than my initial doubt. I rushed into the booth and dialed my parents' number. Luckily, I had plenty of change on me. "Hey, it's me." There was no reply. Just a mechanical sound. "My car broke down on the way, can you hear me?" I could only hear the same clear, static sound. I guessed that the payphone was busted. Ugh, I had enough of it. I went to put the phone back on the hook and I heard a voice say, "I'll be there soon." The phone line was abruptly cut. Who did I just speak to? Because it was a woman's voice, I guess it was either my sister or my mum. I thought about it further. I didn't say where I was, so it felt strange that my sister and mum said they'd be there soon. A gust of wind shook some nearby trees. It sounded like murmuring. I decided to head back to the car. I realized that I was on a dark mountain road in the middle of nowhere with this oddly placed phone booth. I was alone in this suspicious place. I got goosebumps. It felt like someone was watching me, hidden in the darkness of the woods. "I'll be there soon." The voice of the woman danced around my mind. It didn't feel right. I could see my car now. I rushed to it, got in, and locked all the doors. My heart was beating through my chest. I stared ahead through the windshield, hoping that something or someone wouldn't appear out of the darkness. It was all too much. I felt like a target, so I shut my eyes. I didn't want to see anything. I don't know how long I stayed like that. It came from the driver's side window. "Whatever you do, don't look. Whatever you do, don't look," I told myself. I couldn't fight the urge any longer. I opened my eyes, slightly, just to sneak a peek. Bright light filled my eyes. Was it morning? But it was night when I shut my eyes. The person who knocked on my window was still there. He was a middle-aged, sunburned man. I could see his mini-truck behind him. He was saying something. I opened the window. "Are you all right, son? You looked like you were in pain, but I guess you were just sleeping. I thought, something bad had happened." I was asleep? I don't remember even feeling tired. "Sorry, the truth is my car broke down. Could I please borrow your phone?" I asked. He was such a decent guy. He not only allowed me to borrow his phone, but he brought me breakfast and introduced me to a car mechanic friend of his. With my car repaired by noon, I managed to get to my parents' house safely. While relaxing at my parents' house, I thought back to what happened last night. I wonder if it was a figment of my imagination. Did I imagine the voice on the phone, then just fall asleep when I got back to my car out of exhaustion? I guess that's the most logical explanation. I didn't give it a second thought. My phone buzzed. It was fully charged now. I checked it and gasped. I couldn't believe my eyes. The call history. 506 missed calls, all from a payphone.